All right. So the title of the presentation is Using Prisma and Other Web Tools, Web Technologies to connect any Canadian household to the internet. So first, what am I doing with my life? That's a question I want to answer a lot of times. But 10 years ago, I learned to code with a bunch of friends by hacking online poker platforms. So I count on you not telling my mom. That would be not super cool of you. And on the right side, you can see one of the bots. Oh, so you can't actually. So you cannot see the slides, right? So in the meantime, I'll say that American MCs are the best. All right, that's good. So that was the title of the presentation, Using Prisma to connect any Canadian household to the internet. And then about me, really quick. 10 years ago, I started to code by hacking poker platforms online. It was a great way to learn stuff. Not really glorious, I would say, but on the right side, you can see a bot called the George Cantor 1. At that time, it had 4 jacks, which is pretty handy if you want to win online poker games, I'd say. After that, I moved to real jobs. So I wrote software for brick-and-mortar stores, law firms, factories, and now the telco industry. So I think you see the focus here. So my focus is really about automating old industries, so industries that have a lot of low-hanging fruits, and that just basic automation can have a huge leap in these industries. So quickly, what is Oxio? So Oxio is a digital ISP, so an internet service provider in Canada. Digital means that we don't own the last mile infrastructure. We'll talk about it later. And we are a provider and also a software company building automation software to help other ISPs around the globe to automate their operations. So we are not offering this software in Canada because telco is war, so we don't want to fuel our competitors. You'll see you have a lot of context about this industry a bit later on. So the Canadian ISP landscape. In the past, there was a monopoly, and prices were super high for average speeds. So that's not good, first. The sad thing is, though, that networks were subsidized by the government. So you have super high taxes, it pays for the networks, and then the monopoly leads to you having to pay super expensive prices for your internet, and you cannot just not have internet, so you pay it anyway. People were angry, of course, and I'm sure you would have been in that case. Now, it's a bit different. So there are laws and regulations that force ISPs, which we call incumbents, like the big players, to rent their network to other operators. The other operators are called competitors. So that being said, prices are still high for average speeds, and people are still angry. And we'll see why a bit later. These are reviews from the three biggest telcos in Canada. So I would say that people are typically 90% angry. A bit of context. So let's talk about the value chain spectrum. On one end, you have the network. So like the network provider. Really, it's a spectrum in the sense that you could be both a service provider and a network provider. But if we look at the extremes, a network provider could only choose to roll out networks across the country, across the regions. They would have super high entry costs. You have to purchase fiber optics and cable. But your margins are super high because you just rent these infra to others and not much operation expense. So what we call the last mile infrastructure is actually what connects the homes to some data centers across the country. So the last mile is really from all the houses to a couple of data centers. So we don't have, as a digital service provider, to roll out networks from those places. We only connect from the data centers to the internet. So which means the digital ISP is their expertise is business to consumer. So it's about serving the customers, innovating in terms of services, and you'll see a bit of examples later on. So entry cost is super low compared to the other end, which is the network provider, because you don't have to roll out infrastructure. On the other hand, you have lower margins because you rent your network from others. And that's where automation is super important to make sure you are super operationally excellent and that you can lower your expenses. So you can see the network provider a bit like AWS in a sense, because they would have all their own physical infra, and they would rent it to others. The digital ISP is like building stuff, building services on top of the networks that already exist, right? So please understand how bad the software world is in telco. So no Canadian ISP has ever built their whole business and operations software in-house. So they see themselves as a network company, and they don't see any advantage in building software. They see software as something that's kind of alien, that it's from another industry. So they would typically purchase a whole monolithic software that would, either one big or a ton of small ones, and then twist their operations, their day-to-day operations, to fit this software. So another weird thing is that, let's say you are a digital ISP, you are using someone else's network. By the law, they have to provide the network to you to create competition because of the X monopoly that there was. But the law only states that they need to give you some kind of access to manipulate and communicate with the network. In fact, they will never give you APIs to communicate with the network. That would be too easy, of course, and that would create too much competition. So the expectations are that as a digital ISP, you will have new subscribers coming in from your website. You'll take all this data, input it in some kind of form online from the network provider, and on their side, they'll grab this data and have another human input it in their own system. So you have a huge flow of humans inputting stuff from A to Z. So that's so every operation of the network must pass to on a form like this, or sometimes it's templated emails. So if you send an email to this address, and it's well formatted, it will change the speed of a customer, or activate someone, or change the modem, and so on. So I guess you can see how old school this is. So then how do you compete against the big guys when everything seems a bit rigged? You start by automating everything. That's something that's a bit obvious for probably all of us in the tech industry, but in the telco space, that's out of this world. So here we have an example of, I don't think you can see really well, but that's a GraphQL mutation. It's called start internet activation. And you've provided the customer info, so the address, the name, and you provide what speed the person wants, and what's the device info. So we want to give him this modem with this MAC address. And this simple mutation allows to connect anyone in Canada to internet. So in this industry, that's a complete game changer, because you abstract you have an interface to connect anyone to any network available in there. Here we have some kind of slide to visualize how it works. So you have the houses on the bottom, and those are connected to one network. I'd say one or plus, but since there is a monopoly or oligopoly, there is no overlap between networks. So some house could be connected to Cogeco, some to Rogers, depending on the region. And then those networks, they give you portals or email templates if you want to interact with the network. So that's where the Internet API, that we call it, comes in handy. So it's really the GraphQL API that abstracts everything to connect customers. So we have bots on each web portal, and just to reverse engineer HTTP calls, craft sessions, and so on, just to make sure that there's no human intervention in there. So if the customer or a customer care agent wants to activate some new customer, change their internet speed, change the modem, and so on, they go through some basic UI that calls this API, and everything is pretty easy for once. So step 2, how do you compete again against the big guys? Basically with crazy short time to market. So you could imagine that, let's say there's a new service that's coming out, satellite internet. You can pretty much imagine that the big players will not have it available, make it available to customers in a few weeks. It's normally a matter of years, to become available to the public. So that's something that by being a tech company, by building our own software, we can just pretty much do everything ourselves and operate fast. So basically, we focus on tools that basically just work, that developers love to use, that developers are super productive using, and most importantly, I think that we already master. We don't have kind of time to rebuild the query builders, ORMs, CSV parsers, and so on. So we stick with Prisma, GraphQL, React, TypeScript, and tools that have a huge community that are already well implanted in the industry. So that's kind of a crazy example here. So a few guys at Oxio said, could be nice to support crypto payments. I mean, it's a few months ago when it actually was worth something. A lot of customers wanted to pay using crypto. So we made a proof of concept in 2 days, just hacking around. We tested it with a few employees, and then GA was 1 week later. So if we think about how our competitors see that and how they'd be able to do it, it would have been a matter of months, if not years, to just have all the legal setup and all the approvals of all departments to roll out something that's kind of simple in the end. Step 3. So how do you compete when you're a tech company and that others are a network company? Well, expansion is super complex for those players. They have to roll out networks to other regions, and if they are not automated and they don't have a lot of software, there's a lot of implications for them. So we can think of so there's a new region, so there are new tax codes. We need to support new devices. So the billing software needs to be updated. We need to activate customers via a new web portal that we need to automate, and so on. So there's a ton of stuff in there that needs to be done on the software side. So if you don't own the software stack, which is the case for all other ISPs, you're super limited in your growth, in your agility, your innovation capabilities, because at the end of the day, if you don't own the software and you cannot update it, maintain it, and operate it, you'll have to plug in together a ton of stuff. You'll call your consultants to make a change request or a feature request, and it's a matter of months or years to be able to come in a new region and operate there. So a short time to market really is, I think, the key differentiator in this industry and in many, many other industries, and that's where startups are super good at. So the architecture to support quick expansion. So on our side, we have a microservices architecture. We have 12 or 15 microservices. So I added a few of them. So you have the analytics. So new region means monitoring the new network, monitoring the usage, monitoring quality of the service. So you want to support new tax codes in the billing microservice. You want to support new devices in the inventory. You need to automate the new activation, and all operations on the network. So that's via the internet microservice. You want to ship to new locations. So you'll partner with maybe Canada Post, UPS, and so on. And you have to add new plans, new services in the product catalog. So that's a ton of software to update. And if you don't own and don't operate that software on a day-to-day basis, you're not in a good shape. On top of all these microservices, we have Apollo Federation to create a super graph just to make sure that the front end doesn't know that it relies on 10, 12 microservices in there. And basically, we have 2 front ends here, which are React web apps. One for the customer-facing part, so the Oxio.ca website, just to subscribe to the services. And then for the Gaia app, which is the agent-facing part. So the agent-facing is what the tech support and customer care agents are using on a day-to-day basis. Finally, each microservice, again, it's about using tools that just work, that people are productive with, and that they love using. So again, all microservices follow the same pattern. So Prisma and Aurora for the database, Lambda with API gateway for everything everything serverless actually, and GraphQL for the API layer. And one thing I want to mention is that when we want to roll out our services to a new region in Canada, we have 2 weeks of lead time. So again, when we compare to competitors, it's about it's months. So which means customers waiting a long time in typically to have this service available. So in the end, what do Canadians gain? I guess they have access to the best services now in their region at a lower price. And all of this is via software, is via automation, is via web development. They have legendary customer experience, I guess, because they are kind of used to having to call their ISP, wait for 25 minutes or more, and to get told, oh, you didn't call the right number. So that's something of the past. They have self-serving capabilities now. They can go to some web portal and handle their connections themselves. They can change their plan, change their address, move to somewhere else, and keep their activation, and so on. And we think we might be like the first internet service provider that they will actually like, because have you seen like 90% of people are super messed up and hate their ISPs. And another thing for the end, I guess, I think with software we are like somehow used to go super deep in like in the tech and nerdy way. I say I worked a long time in machine learning, and it was super intense. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of opportunities to just find old school industries that really need to be automated, and that there are a lot of low hanging fruits. So if there are like entrepreneurs in here, I beg you to tackle these industries, and thank you very much. Merci. All right, questions?
Yeah, hello. In the beginning, you showed that there were a lot of forms involved and humans putting data into the systems because there were no APIs. Did you then build the APIs, or did you build then a software, for example, that can control the browser and then fill out forms automatically?
Mm-hmm. Right. So we built the software to. So I think there's a slide. Not sure if you can see that one, but all the network. Oh no, that's bad. So yeah, we built bot for each web portal. So we started with Selenium, like a naive, use case. It was a bit too slow, so we ended up just reverse engineering the HTTP calls. So we can see we use our customer care agents to use the forms like they were using it as they are intended. So we record all the traffic, we reverse the calls, and then we just replay them. So we are able to just to know that if we want to activate this customer or change that speed, we need to send this huge weird ASP.NET payload somewhere with this and that header, and it will work. So it's really about bots that are pretending to be humans, and there's a lot of like throttling and so on. So we need to be kind of smart in a way, because we cannot just like bombard them with calls. Thank you.
So the situation you described in Canada, I think it's exactly the same here, and I guess in many other countries as well. Do you believe there's an opportunity to productize the software that you guys build and kind of use that in other markets as well? Or do you feel it's necessary to own your own stack? So the ISP, the operator, the telco company would need to build, maintain, operate, change the software?
We really think there's an opportunity there to provide our software to other ISPs and use it like we do, because we have a mindset of like kind of a Shopify for ISP in a way. People could, like the community could build plugins. So let's say there are a lot of networks in Germany. People could build their own plugin, their own bots to automate these networks, and have a marketplace where you can just get this plugin from there. So I think the community-first approach and the crowdsourcing the plugins is a way to make sure that it works in other countries and other regions, because otherwise we end up in the same situation where the ISP would just buy a monolithic software that doesn't really work for their operation, and they would end up in the same shit.
Hi, and thanks for the presentation. It was very inspiring about the amount of low-hanging fruit that there is in the traditional industries. So thanks for this. Just one question. When you make this draft to enable crypto payments, and you said you had like something already working in a week, just out of curiosity, how big was the team working on this? How many people were involved in this task?
2.
Amazing.
I guess it's just about using software that you like, tools that you already master and that you like using. So if you're passionate about it, you'll code all night and it will happen pretty quick. Thank you.
Thank you, Ollie. Please, another round. That is